What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the stream on this awesome Monday afternoon. It is an off and on again rainy but sunny day here in Miami today. I can't complain too much because unlike our friends over on the Gulf side, we are not hurricane prepping. We might be hurricane partying, much to Publix's chagrin this week, but we are not hurricane prepping where I am. If you guys are watching on the Gulf side, please be taking all the necessary precautions, but our prayers and our thoughts are with you as we gear up for a big storm coming to Florida. We've got a great week ahead of us and lots to share with you guys, and I'm so excited to see everybody back on the stream and active in our chat. Lots happened last week when I traveled to Wisconsin for the RNC debate, the first ever presidential debate for the 2024 election cycle. Boy, do I think we have a lot to talk about in the next few months about all of that and just the election at large. I think we are really gearing up for an unprecedented political situation in America. Not to be like completely ominous right away on a Monday afternoon to start off our week, but we're going to have a lot to talk about over the next few months. Not today. We've got something different to talk about today though, but I'm just super excited to see this community continue to grow like freaking crazy, especially to all of you who have jumped over from Instagram and TikTok with our links in my stories and bios over there. We just have continued to see crazy, unprecedented, insane growth on our short form video platforms, and we are so glad that you guys are here tuning into the stream, especially if you are a new-ish viewer. Always to start things out, we ask that you guys introduce who you are and where you are watching from over in our live chat. We do our absolute best to make our streams as much of a sense of community and real authenticity as humanly possible on our little corner of the internet here, and we are so excited to see you joining our group of friends and family. It is great to have you here. Jared wants to know, what coffee are we drinking? Peppermint tea, because I've been talking a lot and had a long day, and we need to make sure she can still talk through the next few hours of content creation. So nothing super fancy, but I did have coffee this morning. We're going to say hi to some people in the stream to kick things off. But first, want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor of today's stream, our amazing friends over at Rough Greens. I am dropping the link right now in our chat for you guys to learn a little bit more. Rough Greens, as you've heard me say before, is an all-natural, human-grade supplement, all made in the USA for your dog's food to improve their nutrition, their energy, their joint health, their immune function and digestive system, all of the above. You just take a scoop, kind of like a protein powder, and you add it on top of your dog's food to provide 19 plus fruits and vegetables to your dog's diet that otherwise wouldn't be there. And they have treats and dental chews and all kinds of other stuff. When Rough Greens sent us a package to try, Libby literally could not stop freaking out. My dog, my corgi, my sweet little sidekick, she absolutely loves their products and whines and whines and whines and whines next to their little bag all day long because she thinks it smells and tastes so good. She's obsessed with both the supplement and the treats alike. She has more energy. Her coat is shinier. She has a lot more playful attitude during the afternoon. And you guys know I love my dog more than anything in the entire world. I would never tell you to give your dog something that I wouldn't personally believe in. So if you are interested in adding some nutrition to your dog's diet, definitely suggest try roughgreens.com. Go check them out, give them some love, and it's just a great overall company with all of the right values to be supporting. We have a lot to talk about today when it comes to the global Green New Deal agenda and how individuals are trying to fight climate change through city governance, which I think is really interesting. It's kind of a different approach than what we've normally seen through the idea of global governance or the idea of the World Economic Forum or the United Nations, but instead focusing in on individual cities and how your city might be next to take some really drastic measures in combating climate change, which we're gonna have a lot to talk about today, like banning meat and dairy consumption, perhaps banning private vehicle ownership, and more. It's a lot to talk about, and we're gonna jump right in, but first want to say hi to everybody coming into the stream in our live chat. Kobe has another health date up for us over on YouTube. I feel better, but I wound up having an allergic reaction to the antibiotics after I'd been taking them for a week. You had to run to the doctor again this weekend. I'm so sorry, Kobe. I feel like every time we do a stream, you have a crazy new update for us. praying for a very quick health recovery for you and hoping that you are back to your 100% normal self very, very soon. Jared and Talia are here on YouTube. Daloon, Marky, and Los Ravosa are watching. Maze Page and Marnus and 23 Fresh are here. Brenda, hi, how are you? Alexandra's watching. We've got GeekyTube Gaming on the stream this Monday. Red Scorpion. Joshua's watching from Germany. So very cool. It's been way too long since I've been to Germany, but you have a very beautiful homeland and beautiful country. Joshua also says it's your first live stream here. We'd love to see it. And another Joshua is watching from Canada. We've got Sabrav watching from India. Total Package 123 and Jacinta are here. Love to see you guys over on YouTube. Jumping to Rumble. Rumble Rick kicks us off in the chat. And you guys, I got to meet Rumble Rick a couple days ago in Milwaukee at the debate. It was awesome. I love getting to meet you guys in real life, in person, and get to give you a hug and shake your hand. And it's just the best feeling in the whole wide world. So love getting to meet you guys, and so great to meet you, Rick. Glock Fanboy is watching. Michael Gabriel is here, and more on Rumble, a community that's growing like crazy in the last few weeks. We love to see that. Over on Getter, we've got, of course, who's first always on Getter, Nitty Witty watching. Ellen Dawn is watching. We've got Joe watching, and Tilly up in Michigan tuning in, and of course the locals gang, M-Rock, Mountain Lover, Crazy Cat Lady, Alex, African Warlord, Tito. You guys, I just love you so very much. Who's ready for a great conversation? Because it's a lot to unpack. Let me just tell you what. As we're jumping in, I just want to let you know I'm traveling again this week as well. So we have a bit of an abnormal schedule. It's for a really fun reason though. I am headed to Colorado for a few days, tomorrow through overnight on Thursday, so I get home on Friday morning, because I'm gonna order my wedding dress finally. That's very exciting, and finally get to pick that out officially. I've narrowed it down to a few options, but I'm like getting all my measurements done and have to get it all placed, the order. It's like a very fancy experience. It takes a lot more than you realize to like buy a wedding dress. It's not the average experience of going shopping, let me just tell you that. But I'm going to order my wedding dress officially. I will say yes to the dress on Wednesday. And to be totally transparent with you, I'm down to a few options and I honestly can't pick, so I have to try them all back on. But we will get there. We will get there. And no, you will not see it until after my wedding, unfortunately, because I work in social media and everything is hugely public, and my fiance works in social media and he will see it. But I might show you some of the ones I said no to, even though I really loved them. So in consideration still, I'm doing that. I'm going to go look at my wedding venue again. We've just got a lot of fun wedding planning stuff to start solidifying and doing all of that. So I will be in Colorado tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. We will have a pre-recorded stream at least for tomorrow and Thursday, because I will be off the grid a bit on airplanes and or at my wedding venue, which has no Wi-Fi and no cell reception, because I like to be difficult. So we're going to have a different time for streaming Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, not our normal 3 p.m. Eastern slot, just because I have way too much going on, but we will still have a stream. Some of them might be pre-recorded and it will be at a different time. I will update you first thing in the morning as soon as I know what time I will be in one spot at my parents' house, able to like plug into Wi-Fi and share the stream with you guys. But wanted to give you a heads up on all of that to be as transparent as possible. And I can't wait for you guys to see some fun pictures of everything and updates on the wedding front, because it is starting to feel very, very real. I got engaged in December and we kind of had the, do we do a 9-month engagement? Do we do kind of a 1.5-year engagement? Because I wanted to get married in the summer or fall. And, in retrospect, I'm very, very glad that we chose the 1.5-year engagement. I think there's a really common trend right now in the conservative movement space of just like, hurry up and get married tomorrow, right after you get engaged. There's no point in having a long engagement. But I have a humongous extended family. Most of our friends who are coming to the wedding and all of our friends who are in the wedding all live in different states and different places. And it just takes a lot of logistics trying to get everybody in the same place at the same time. Plane tickets are so expensive. Venues are booking out like crazy still because they're still playing catch up from COVID. So it was really nice to just like take time, take a breath, have the opportunity to plan things a little bit farther out. And now it is really, really, really starting to feel very real. Total Package wants to know what happened to the Saturday stream. I was pretty under the weather this weekend. I tried to update you guys in the community tab on YouTube and everything else. So I sincerely, hugely apologize for that. But we are going to do a double header stream one of our days this week with 2 different streams to make up for that. So my apologies. I hope you guys can understand. I go at 1,000,000 miles an hour with all of the things that I am doing. The stream is just just one of a tiny, giant list. Stream is one tiny part of a giant list of everything that I do every day, and I get run down pretty easy. So had to rest a little bit this weekend, but it was all great. All right. All of that to be said, all of the updates to be said, let's jump in. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so I saw this post first on my Instagram over the weekend, and I noticed that this was picking up everywhere, all over social media, and I could not possibly believe that it was real. Like, no part of me could wrap my head around the fact that this might be a real headline or that this was a legitimate claim, but I tend to trust this source pretty closely. I love this podcast. I love the hosts of this organization, and I think they do a really great job telling us generally the truth that isn't covered by the mainstream media. So although I was initially skeptical when I saw this post, I wanted to lean in and trust it as much as I could and ended up doing my own independent research of it. You guys might listen to the PBD podcast, Patrick Bet-David and Valuetainment. They do unbelievably amazing work, and I absolutely love all of their content. But they had posted yesterday that the C40 cities, which if you don't know anything about the C40 cities, we're going to be unpacking here in just a second, so don't you worry, but including the American cities of C40, are going to ban meat, dairy, new clothes, and private cars by 2030. This is really aggressive language, and I will say that up front. We're going to be unpacking it on our own. I don't know that I would use the word ban in this post, but I instantly had my interest piqued when I read the caption of this post over on the side right here. 14 major American cities signed on to a globalist climate agreement with a truly dystopian goal for the country's immediate future that includes eliminating meat and dairy consumption, private vehicle ownership, air travel, and clothing purchases. The C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group plans to accomplish this vision by 2030, which might sound a little bit still far away now in 2023, almost 2024. But just to paint a really horrifyingly scary picture for you, my fiance looked at me this weekend and said, "Babe, do you realize that 2006 is farther away from where we are now than 2040? Yeah. So we're closer to 2040 than we are to 2006. So 2030 sounds pretty darn close to me, especially as we approach 2024. And I feel like I blinked and this entire year has just flown by, which is really crazy. And this is where my interest started going, wait, what? Austin, Boston, Chicago, Houston, LA, Miami, New Orleans, New York City, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Portland, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and Seattle are all on board. Obviously, I started freaking out because I just moved to the Miami area in March, thinking that you were fleeing a lot of the problems that you've been experiencing in most of these other cities on the list. But apparently, at least according to this post on Instagram, I'm now finding out that perhaps Miami is part of the problem as well. And I actually just commented that on their post yesterday, not me reading this, having just moved to Miami. So I saw this post and immediately wanted to start breathing in a bag that meat and dairy and private car ownership are all going to be outlawed, even in American cities like the one where I live, in the name of climate change offset, in the name of the global Green New Deal. And I've heard a little bit over the years about the C40 climate working group with all of these cities all over the world, that they're trying to do this on a city level when it comes to governance rather than rely on global governance or the UN or even national governments of different countries around the world. But I didn't really know much about their C40 specific initiative that was referenced in this post. So I ended up going down this whole rabbit hole yesterday and today all over the internet, trying to unpack what was really being said by this Instagram post, because like any of you should, I never trust, like any of you should not, I never trust a single Instagram post just on its merits. You have to go out of your way to make sure that you are doing your own research yourself and understanding what is really going on in the world, getting to the primary source as much as humanly possible, rather than just seeing a headline and going with it and buying into everything, especially in the era of artificial intelligence, when you can't really trust what is and is not proven to be real with the media that we are consuming in social media. You should apply the exact same standard to the mainstream media, by the way, perhaps even more, but I digress. Different conversation for another time. So after I went through this whole rabbit hole, I ended up coming back to just the primary source going to the C40 cities website themselves. And if you've never played around with the C40 cities website, or you have no idea what this group is, we're just going to start at the base level and then unpack what exactly they want to accomplish, because I think this is a fascinating experiment, if it were actually able to come true, in how a lot of the truly dystopian, and I would argue, frankly, extremely ineffective ways to combat climate change or provide a more positive environmental impact or create more sustainable living habits, if this was able to be accomplished through this mechanism, it would be a lot easier to happen than relying on federal governments or global governance or the World Economic Forum or any of the above. So I think this is a fascinating model, and it's worth us unpacking, but their goals, especially their ambitious goals, in my opinion, dramatically miss the mark on where we can be a lot more effective in solving for environmental crises that we are dealing with, and are much more interested in authoritarian control than actually helping the environment. You'll see what I mean by that. But in case you aren't already familiar, C40 is this global network where mayors of individual cities have signed on to be part of this like conglomerate co-op, not official organization, but it's kind of just like a hold hands around the world and sing kumbaya organization of cities all over the world that are united in action to confront the climate crisis. And you've seen, as I'm talking here, all the names of all these cities rolling through here. And these cities are all over the world. There are 96 of these member cities, many of which are in America. You see Philly, New York, Washington, D.C. float through on here. All of these cities together make up more than 20% of the global economy. So we're talking about huge population hubs. We're talking about very job-centric urban areas that involve massive conglomerations of people. And we're going to go through this map here in just a second as it pertains to America, but you guys around the world might see your cities on here as well. Around the world, their website says C40 mayors and the cities that they lead. So it's been one individual from all of these cities all around the world signing on to this group, this hold hands, make the pledge, do the thing group, rather than somebody voting on that directly. And the cities they lead are taking ambitious, collaborative, and urgent climate action that aligns with science-backed targets. They work together across borders in order to protect people and communities everywhere and build a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future. And then there's this cute little drawing of everybody playing with the globe, like a kid's map on the floor or something. As you can see, obviously, this map is very, very all-inclusive all across the world. Every continent is represented. Greenland and Iceland are just like, yeah, no, we're not doing this. Alaska's like, yeah, no, we're not doing this. But you can see very, very, very many cities all over the world on every single continent are involved in this. In North America, the cities that are involved in C40 are Austin, Texas, not surprising to me at all. Boston, not surprising to me at all. Chicago, Houston, LA, Miami surprised me a little bit, particularly with our mayor that I really, really like, and I think is a genuinely interesting person, currently running for president of the United States. I just moved here in March, so this one really did surprise me. Montreal, Canada does not surprise me at all. New Orleans, New York City, Philadelphia, none of these surprised me. Phoenix surprised me initially until I realized that by the time I had left, Phoenix felt a lot more like LA than it did any other Western city, so I'm not surprised actually when I really think about it by the time I had moved away. Portland, obvious. San Francisco and Seattle, obvious. Toronto and Vancouver, obvious. And Washington, D.C. is on the list as well. In Europe, you're looking at a lot of the major population centers and capital cities: Amsterdam, Athens, Barcelona, Berlin, Copenhagen, Heidelberg, Istanbul, Lisbon, London, Madrid, Milan, Oslo, Paris, Rome, Rotterdam, Stockholm. Tel Aviv surprised me quite a bit, but not really at the same time. And Warsaw, Poland on here, and just literally everywhere all over the world. Sydney and Melbourne in Australia, obviously, and Auckland in New Zealand. Again, these are all cities where one person, individual people, the mayor, that's it. Not the city council, not voters in any of these cities, just one person, the mayor, has decided to sign on to be a part of this loose conglomeration of cities that are dedicated to urgent climate action. I'm just reading this from their website. urgent climate action that involves ambitious and collaborative goals in order to protect people and communities everywhere and build a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future. They didn't ask the people who voted for them what they think might be the appropriate response there, but they have decided to take action on it. So if you go to the What We Do tab of their website, there's 4 major areas that this group has focused their combined influence, resources, and agenda. A, raising climate action. B, influencing the global agenda. C, building a movement. And D, scaling up climate action. All of this action looks like individual policies in each one of these cities through laws and governance orders in Miami or Phoenix or Los Angeles, completely separate from one another, but really capture the same end goals like air quality and how you can build more sustainable buildings with more sustainable construction materials or green roofs, which I'm all for. I think this section I'm like all about food systems and reducing food waste. All about transportation, trying to make public transportation easier in their city. All about. I'm loving all of this so far. Like, you've sold me on this. Shipping, urban planning, waste management, a huge problem that far too many cities are really focused on. If you walk around downtown New York, and you're walking through residential areas in Manhattan, it's disgusting how poorly waste management is actually handled in a lot of these hyper urban areas. So far, I'm like totally on board, right? With this one area where they are focusing their What We Do strategy and scaling up action, not necessarily for climate change, but for environmentalism, for conservation, for sustainability. Like, yes, you're speaking my love language at this point for what does our city have a responsibility to do for our people. As we move left, I start to get a little, no, maybe not. Building a movement. And the very first thing on here, which we're going to open in a new tab and read in just a second, is the Global Green New Deal. So it's not about passing the Green New Deal in your own country, which, by the way, would do little to nothing to actually positively impact the environment. If you talk to climate scientists, if you talk to environmentalists, if you talk to policy experts about this, there are literally infinity better options than the Green New Deal. And the countries that the Green New Deal adopts its policies from and its governance structure from with authoritarianism are actually doing the worst to destroy the environment, namely these 2 countries right here, China and India, which together pollute and cause more problems to the climate more than any other country in the world combined. So that's problematic in and of itself. Youth engagement, which I think is smart of them. The environment is the #1 issue that my generation cares about. So it's smart of these people to be leaning into that and incentivizing that, but they're going to give you all of the wrong solutions for how to deal with the problems that we are dealing with today. And cities race to zero. If you move over one more, influencing the global agenda. Yeah. I start to kind of have a problem when you put the words global and agenda next to each other, because I really don't like being told by corporate CEOs and multi-billionaires that I will own nothing and be happy in the name of saving the earth when they jump on a private plane to Switzerland every year to go skiing and drink alcohol and hang out with all their best buddies in their quest for world domination. The words global agenda, to me, spur images in my mind of eating cockroaches rather than real food, of making sure that I am fine being completely taken over by corporate management and company CEOs and just rolling over civil liberties in the process of doing that, and that private property will be a thing of the past, which maybe I'm selfish for saying, I'm just really not on board with. So these 2 words right next to each other, I start to have a problem with. They want global diplomacy and advocacy on this, green and just transition, financing the green transition, and engaging the private sector. And then this is what I want us to really focus on today. They start saying that they want to raise climate ambition, which is a very clear word, ambition. That means setting goals and trying to accomplish those goals in a meaningful way. That makes me think there has to be some sort of policy agenda associated with all of this, right? Because you can't just say, we want to get rid of climate change, we want to make the environment happier, we want to decrease humans' carbon footprint, we want to create a more sustainable future, without actually incorporating policy suggestions and or solutions for all of these cities at the individual level in order to make that happen. So today we're going to read their 1.5 degrees Celsius climate action plan, which is where the post from Valuetainment got all of their information to share. They want to put in high impact accelerators all over the world. They want inclusive and thriving cities all over the world. And they want research and knowledge more about climate change and what's going on with the environment all over the world. But this top result right here of what our climate ambition should be involves some pretty darn impossible and or completely misguided or mismanaged solutions, so to speak, for how to make the environment a happier, better, healthier, more thriving place. And when it comes to this plan, I want us to look at this map right here. We're not talking about a global structure of governance. We're not talking about a World Economic Forum or a United Nations or a World Health Organization push that all of these countries' federal governments would be working towards. No. Instead, we are talking about creating benchmarks and policy solutions that are directly being suggested to the mayors of Sydney or Melbourne or Cape Town or Dakar or Chicago or Mexico City or LA or San Francisco or Miami, where I live, or New Orleans or Yokohama or Beijing or Stockholm or Oslo or Warsaw or Milan. We are talking about pretty easy to accomplish city level, not country level, city level changes to laws and policies that would impact your life far more dramatically than you could possibly begin to imagine. Because it is very difficult, if you know anything about politics or just policy and governance structure in general, to get something done at the national level of any country. The gears of government grind very, very slowly. The red tape of bureaucracy, the insane power that individual parties have, that donors have, can stop things in their tracks. Filibustering legislation can stop things in its tracks. Elections upset the entire cycle because actual policy is very rarely accomplished the closer you get to a major national election. So it would be really difficult to accomplish what C40 Cities wants to do at the national level, or particularly the international level, without very, very, very heightened civil unrest and without probably votes of no confidence, impeachments, etc. But if you zoom into the city level, it's pretty darn easy for mayors or city councils or county commissioners or local level elected officials in a place like Miami or in a place like Lima or in a place like Vancouver to get something done at the city level. Because let's be totally honest with ourselves, most people, the vast majority of people, don't pay attention at all to what is happening at the city level. Most people probably couldn't even name who their mayor is, which is really sad. At least that's the way that it is in the United States. I don't know if you guys feel this way if you live in another country, but in America today, most people, it's sad but true, probably could not name who their mayor is. We certainly know who the president and the vice president are. We probably know who our congressmen and senators are. Although you'd be really surprised. When I worked in the U.S. Senate, you would be shocked how many people don't know who their elected officials are. Most people don't pay attention at all to their local elected officials because more often than not, the really dramatic policies that are super partisanly driven, that involve a massive change to your lifestyle, that would be really sweeping when it comes to how you live your day-to-day life, don't come from the local level. There are exceptions, and I think we can look at cities like San Francisco and LA and New York City as prime examples of local governance completely upsetting day-to-day life and normal culture for people. But more often than not, in a place like Miami or a place like Phoenix or even a place like Vancouver or Seattle, Seattle might be a bad example. Seattle's kind of a good example of what happens when everything goes wrong at the local level. Let's find a different example for America. More often than not, these cities all in here, Austin, Houston, New Orleans, Miami, Chicago's a bad example, Toronto perhaps, Portland and Seattle have gotten pretty out of control, but Phoenix for sure. These people are not hugely impacted by what's happening at the local level. So theoretically, just from a play the politics game perspective, if you were able to accomplish what C40 Cities wants to accomplish through their 1.5 degrees Celsius climate action plan, which we are about to read here in just a second, if you were able to accomplish that city by city through mayors taking quiet action on new legislation through city council, through city councilors taking quiet action through town halls that aren't really publicized or very quiet clauses in other bills about other things happening at the city level, you would be able to accomplish this right under most people's noses without anyone even being aware it was happening in the first place. Certainly without any major backlash to that person's political party, certainly without upsetting what's happening at the federal government, which gets 99.9% of media attention in America anyway, and you would almost effectively be able to change humanity and change civilization overnight with these radical sweeping policy initiatives in the name of solving for climate change, which I don't really believe is really the end goal here, because I do care about that and I do care about environmentalism. But I don't think these solutions make a whole lot of sense from a scientific perspective. But you would be able to do that overnight without any backlash whatsoever or even knowledge that it was happening until it was way too late. And just as an interesting side note and reminder before we dive into this action plan, C40 Cities specifically advocates for something called a Global Green New Deal. But interestingly, they're not advocating for global governance to make that happen. They're not advocating for the UN to have jurisdiction over your country's government. They're not advocating for the World Economic Forum to replace the President of the United States or the Prime Minister of the UK or Italy or Australia or Parliament or the government of Israel. They're not advocating for that. They are saying that the Global Green New Deal they are putting forward lays out a set of principles to be adopted by who? By cities worldwide, and takes a collaborative approach to climate action. The Global Green New Deal Coalition is a vital part of this work. It comprises political leaders, investors, businesses, labor unions, young people, civil society, and communities disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis and poverty. The Global Green New Deal is by nature a holistic, intersectional approach to climate action, recognizing that climate, social, and economic justice can only be achieved together in the where? Cities that we build together. Everyone will have the right to clean air, a living wage, good green jobs, protection from extreme weather. No wonder they want to be here in Miami. Healthy local food, a safe place to live, and green spaces to enjoy, regardless of race, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, citizenship status, ability, or socioeconomic status. But they don't say they want a global government to make all of this happen. They don't say this needs to happen through the UN. They don't say that this needs to happen through the World Health Organization. They don't say that this needs to happen through the World Economic Forum. They're saying they want all of these principles to be adopted by cities all over the world to allow for an ease of policy implementation, to allow for a more tailored approach for each individual city, but adopting all of the same principles, adopting all of the same policy initiatives, getting to the same end result as if there were a global governance structure to make that happen anyway. Frightening, frightening stuff. So they've laid out for us this massive 68-page document that you kind of have to dig for. The media doesn't really cover any of this stuff. I had to go out of my way on their own website to get to this report, but it is here, it is out there, and I'll make sure to drop the link in the chat so that you guys can check it out as well. But this is C40 Cities' Future of Urban Consumption in a 1.5 degrees Celsius world. This was originally published, I believe, in 2019, and it was republished and re-emphasized as what we want to do right now in 2023. And this is basically the headline report with all of the ambitious targets that the C40 Cities Initiative would like to achieve by 2030. Not saying you have to do this, not saying this is this way or the highway, but suggesting to cities all over the world that these should be the policies they adopt in some capacity. Just as a reminder, that valuetainment post that we pulled up at the very beginning that got me interested in this subject to begin with suggests that the cities involved in C40 in America, Austin, Boston, Chicago, Houston, LA, Miami, New Orleans, NYC, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Portland, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and Seattle are going to ban meat, dairy, clothes, private cars. We're about to get into all of that by 2030. That's not necessarily true, but it is certainly the policy initiatives that are put forward in this 68-page document suggesting that cities who are a part of this coalition make happen through whatever means possibly necessary, either culturally change the demand for meat and dairy and all of those things, or legally and through legislation start taking action to officially ban those things to change the trajectory of climate change and environmentalism in their city and around the world. We couldn't possibly begin to go through a 68-page document here on the stream. There's just no way that I would put you guys through that torture, and it's extremely fine print with lots of acronyms and key terms and all of that, just like any other government or policy document. If you've never worked in Washington, or you've never worked in your own country's government or taken poli-sci classes or whatever, this is just a lot to unpack. So I want to get us to the actual meat of where we need to go, because I read the whole thing and you don't really need to, but just in case you do want to read the whole thing, I will drop the link right now in the chat for all of you guys to check out later. They get to, at the very end, in these weird charts that it's really difficult to start unpacking for yourself if you haven't read the entire document. And I'm dropping the link right now because I know you guys are asking for it, so you can check it out and scroll along as we go. At the very end, in this like weird chart, fancy graphic looking thing, we're going to go right to page 35. They start saying that they have specific targets for consumption climate action. Essentially, they have targets and end goals and ambitions, right? Because they're trying to change climate ambition, according to their website, to change demand for consumption of certain products that are causing problems to the environment. Now, those products might look like driving your car versus taking public transportation. Certainly, airline travel would be considered consumption of things, of a product that is changing the environmental trajectory of our world, and food is a major part of that as well. So they've said in this document, C40 Cities has established 2 target levels. A progressive target level that's really interesting. It's based off of research that identifies the threshold of resource efficiency and behavioral change potential as defined by current technology and progressive changes in consumer choices. And then they hide this thing in here. The second, more ambitious target level, they call it the ambitious level, is based on a future vision of resource efficient production and extensive changes in consumer choices. Blech. Lots of words. Word vomit and policy speak abound in that document. Basically, the most simple way to understand that is they have a more realistic end goal that they would like to get to by 2030 through citywide policy changes to change supply and demand of certain products to make the environment better. But they also have a really ambitious, less realistic goal that in a perfect world, according to these people, we would want to hit through all 96 of the cities involved in the C40 Cities Climate Group to change the world forever and to save the planet. So the first benchmark is kind of the expected benchmark. Like, hello, if you're going to be a part of our group, you better hurry up and get this done by 2030, or you don't really care about the earth and you don't really care about the environment. We just don't believe you and you can't hang out with us anymore. The second is, if you want to go above and beyond and save the planet for your own city, here is what you need to accomplish. Both the first tier, the more realistic, less ambitious, what do they call it, progressive target level, and the ambitious, unrealistic, crazy perfect world target level are both insane. Like, this could never possibly happen in the next 7 years. 7 years, not even 6. 6 and a few months, 6 and 4 months. This could never possibly happen. We would literally have to change human civilization and society entirely to get to either one of these benchmarks, even at the city level. But I want you to read very, very closely what this working group and potentially your mayor are interested in making happen through any means necessary, culturally, through legislation, through policy, through laws, etc., making happen in your own community. They focus on a few different subsections of topics here, one being buildings and infrastructure, that they're trying to at least get to efficient materials. They want to use more sustainable materials. I'm totally on board for that. I have absolutely no problems with any of that. They specifically want to reduce steel and cement, and you can see this first column right here I'm highlighting for you guys is the progressive target. That's the more realistic one. This one is the ambitious target. Which is the less realistic perfect world one. So they want to reduce steel and cement. They want a 10% reduction in a realistic world in demand for new buildings. So we're just going to have to put up with the old buildings. In a realistic sense, in an unrealistic perfect world sense, they want a 20% reduction in demand for new buildings. That's a pretty massive change. Think about a city like New York that's just constantly under construction and constantly under development, tearing down old buildings, putting up new buildings that might be uninhabitable by modern building standards. That's a massive change. They want specific breakdowns of timber buildings related to resident and commercial buildings. They want cement replaced with low carbon alternatives. I have no huge problems with any of this. Do I think these are a little outrageous in terms of exactly what they would like to accomplish? Yes, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I wouldn't like to live in a society that promotes sustainable building materials. I think that's better for everybody. It's a lot more efficient in the long run. You don't have to destroy your resources in rebuilding a new building just for the sake of it. But I do think that they're trying to accelerate things here to a bit of an unrealistic standard. But now we get to the really interesting crux of the argument and part of this document. Food. They want to change how you eat in order to reduce emissions. Now, I'm not going to provide commentary. I'm just going to read for a few minutes, okay? And then I'll provide some commentary. But let's just read what C40 Cities wants 96 mayors all over the world, including more than a dozen mayors in America, to change by 2030 to save the planet, allegedly. In 2017, emissions associated with food were estimated to account for 13% of total consumption-based emissions across C40 cities. In other words, 13% of all of the problems in these 96 cities came from food production. Roughly 3/4 of these emissions stem from consumption of animal-based foods, with the remaining 25% from consumption of plant-based foods. Here are the consumption interventions, the changes that C40 cities would like to make by 2030. A progressive target, a more realistic target, would be 16 kilograms of meat per person per year. The ambitious target in 2030, 0 kilograms of meat consumption per person per year. Goodbye. No soup for you. The progressive target for dairy, the realistic one, would be 90 kilograms of dairy consumption, milk or derivative equivalent, per person per year. I suppose that would also include yogurt, cheese, ice cream, etc. I know this is a little small. I want to include all of it. Here, I'll try to zoom in a little bit more for you guys. But you can always pull up the link I dropped in the chat in another tab if you want. The ambitious target in 2030, 0 kilograms of dairy consumption per person per year. Meat or derivative equivalent. Cheese, yogurt, ice cream. Lovely. Both the progressive and ambitious target want 2,500 calories that you would consume per person per day. I know it says kilocalories, but this is what we would call a calorie that you eat. That to me seems fairly reasonable in my opinion, but I also don't think that you need to create a policy based on how much people are allowed to eat. Think about somebody like an Olympic athlete. Michael Phelps was eating like 10,000 calories a day when he was training for the Olympics at the height of his training. And he was in tip-top human shape. So it's not always about the exact number of calories that you intake. It also has to do with your lifestyle. It also has to do with what types of calories that you are consuming. creating a cap on how many calories people are allowed to eat sounds a lot to me like authoritarianism, like a dictatorship. I'm just saying. There have been societies that have given you a checklist of how much you're allowed to eat every day. And I'm pretty sure that never went well in the long run. I'm pretty sure people were starving to death because of the greed and corruption of their own government. Breadlines, anyone? C40 wants, in a progressive, realistic sense, a 50% reduction in total household food waste. I actually am a big believer in reducing food waste. So I think that's a nice goal, but I don't know how you're going to police that. The ambitious target would be 0% household food waste. And they want either a 50 or 75% reduction in supply chain food waste. So, in other words, in order to save the planet, we are asking 96 mayors to create a change somehow, probably through legislation and banning things, in a perfect world to have zero meat consumption per person in your city per year, zero milk or dairy consumption per person per year. That's it. End of story. It's the only way to save the planet. Seems awfully convenient to me that we are also rolling out lab-grown meat to benefit billionaires and also harm your nutritional value, whilst we are saying it's not enough to just not want meat. We need to ban meat so that you're forced to buy the product that Bill Gates is funding in a lab that you really don't want to eat that costs a lot more. It's just interesting food for thought. But food isn't the only thing, or food for thought, that's pretty good, nice, that this group wants to ban or fundamentally change. We're going to zoom through these next few ones, and then I'm going to provide some thoughts here on the other end. Clothing and textiles, they say, is a major contributor to carbon emissions and something that we need to be offsetting. In a perfect world, they want you to buy 3 clothing items per person per year. 3 new clothing items per person per year. Good luck if you live in a big house full of lots of kids and you constantly need new clothing because your kids are ruining their clothing. In a more progressive sense, in the realistic sense, they want 8 new clothing items per person per year with, again, 50 or 75% reductions in supply chain waste. I actually believe that the clothing supply chain and just manufacturing of clothing is a massive problem that isn't talked about far enough when it comes to environmentalism. But it's not necessarily because people are buying more than 8 items of clothing a year or 3 items of clothing a year. It's because the companies and the production of your clothes that is currently the norm in the textile industry involves literal sweatshops with the worst human treatment possible, like literally enslaving people to make this happen in countries where there are no environmental regulations enforced whatsoever. The types of conditions that your clothing is being produced in China, in India, in a lot of these countries that are the worst polluters on the face of the planet, those are the problem when it comes to the overall textile industry and clothing industry net negative on the environment, not the fact that you are buying the clothes that have already been made. So different conversation for a different time. I'm glad that people are starting to pay attention to that at least, but changing what you are allowed to buy in a country that didn't even make the clothes, not exactly the solution that I would advocate for. Private transportation, driving your own car is a huge problem for the environment. So C40 emissions says realistically in your city, you need to have 190 vehicles total, not new, 190 total vehicles, private vehicles, per 1,000 people. In a perfect world, you would have 0 private vehicles per 1,000 people. 0. Zilch. Nada. Good luck if there's a natural disaster. Good luck if you have a hurricane come your way and you need to evacuate. Can't help you. Sorry. Good luck if you need to take a road trip to move to a new city or take your kid to college or go to the grocery store and the buses are out. Good luck if the electricity grid gets hacked. and you can't take the metro or the train, good luck. Good luck. I'm just saying. Tito says in our locals chat, back to horses. The Amish are on to something. I'm telling you right now, the Amish are on to something with all of this, because that's basically the direction where we are headed. Aviation, taking planes, which I do several times a week. I know that that is not the norm, but that is just the demand of my job to do what I do for a living. Aviation is a huge problem for emissions and environmental impact. In a realistic sense, this group wants you to take one short-haul return flight every 2 years per person. It was a little difficult for me to understand what a short-haul return flight is. To my knowledge, they weren't saying this is for like a long trip. Somewhere that you could drive to, I think, is how I was interpreting this, and I might be wrong, so you guys might know better. But short haul flight to me meant somewhere that you theoretically could drive or take the train to. Good luck driving, though, if we have no car ownership. So I don't know how you're going to get to these places if you don't have a car, other than maybe a train. Amtrak, by the way, horribly unreliable in most cities. I took it a few times between New York and DC, but other than that route, and even then it took way too long. We had delays and it was just an absolute problem. But we're not talking about a European rail system that's very reliable that people take all the time in America. If you don't have a car and you need to fly somewhere that would theoretically take you 10, 11 hours to drive, but you're not allowed to have a car, that would be a massive, massive problem. So that's how I was interpreting short haul flight. They want you to take one of those flights every 2 years per person, realistically. How they would enforce this on a city by city level, I have absolutely no idea, other than like tracing where you go and tracking where you go, kind of like they did with contact tracing from COVID on a city by city or a state by state level. Ambitiously, they want you to take one short haul flight every 3 years per person. Yeah, I do that at least every 3 weeks right now, so maybe I'm part of the problem. I always fly commercial, so that is a different conversation for another time, but I love how the people telling me this are the ones who fly private to Davos every single year to tell me that I hate the environment and I'm such a horrible person. Good Lord. I don't know how they plan on enforcing any of this, but it's just getting crazy. And don't think they're stopping there. They want to regulate your electronics and your household appliances. They would like to see changes in the lifetime of laptops and electronic devices. I think, wouldn't we all? We all hate when our batteries crap out because Apple dropped a new product and all of a sudden we need a new one because our current one doesn't work. But the main takeaways here that they want you to know are this. Urban climate action can have a significant impact on consumption-based emissions. If cities act on deadline 2020 commitments, that's these commitments to 2023, and implement the consumption interventions outlined by this report, alongside a global low-carbon transition of production in line with NDC commitments, consumption-based emissions would be cut by a massive amount, basically a 70% change. All of these changes are interdependent and need to happen simultaneously. So they're telling the mayors of all of these 96 cities, you can't just pick and choose. You can't do the flight thing without the car thing. You can't do the meat thing without the electronics thing. You can't do the clothing thing without the flying. It all has to happen all at the exact same time. So if you're signed on to save the world from climate change, your city, in some capacity, has to implement every single one of these things that we are telling you to do. By putting in place consumption interventions, C40 cities can speed up the global transition to low carbon production, as well as the delivery of these commitments. The delivery of these and implementation of these interventions will require hugely ambitious action on a scale the world has not yet seen. Don't you love, by the way, that they just put this in like the weirdest, smallest, hard to read font in the tiniest way possible? We are like massively zoomed in on this page. This is what this page looks like. So typically you would just read right past this, but this is why learning how to read policy documents is hugely important, because they hide the big stuff in charts and graphics and in tiny little font that's really, really difficult to read. So we'll zoom back in so we can read it, because my eyesight is not good. But to fully reduce consumption-based emissions in line with this trajectory, further technical, social, and economic interventions will be needed. In other words, even all of the stuff that we have told you you need to do in order to save the world from climate change is not enough. So we're going to need even more than this. What else more? I could not possibly begin to understand. Outlaw air travel entirely, outlaw vehicle transport entirely. You've already banned all meat and all dairy, so I don't know what other foods you could possibly want to ban or change. Maybe ban private farm ownership? I have no idea. These people have never been more clear that it will never be enough. That's exactly what they are saying in their own policy document, that in order to save the world, even if it's not at all in line with actually beneficial problem solving, we have to think bigger and crazier and more ambitious than the world has ever thought before, or we will all die. Nitty-Witty says, it seems like they are looking at dystopian novels as instruction materials. I don't know about you. This sounds a whole lot more like a benchmark to 1984 than a benchmark to 2030 to me. I don't know how more people are not paying attention to this and or unaware of this. I mean, our media never covers it, so that's probably why. But how many times can the people in power start saying the quiet part out loud, very, very loud, screaming it from the rooftops on their own website, that we have to take ambitious action on a scale the world has not yet seen, even further than banning meat, banning milk, banning private vehicle ownership, saying how often you're allowed to get on an airplane or how often you're allowed to buy clothes, no matter where the clothes were made or what kind of conditions they were made in or what company made them with horrible labor or environmental impacts. How many times can these people say the quiet part out loud before people realize that it's not really about what they say it's about? Because let's be honest, if these mayors and if this working group of C40 cities were really serious, we're actually committed to offsetting carbon emissions, we're actually committed to impacting the environment in a more positive way, we're actually committed to stopping climate change, they would be really up in arms and upset about, I don't know, the lab-grown meat industry, which according to some studies is up to 25 times more damaging, with 25 times more emissions than the normal meat industry and the cattle industry in America, than normal healthy meat production. You would think if these people were serious about stopping climate change and making the earth a happier place, we would specifically be creating policy benchmarks for China and for India that dump more plastic into the ocean and put more carbon emissions into the atmosphere than every other country on earth combined, where coincidentally, most of our clothing and textiles are made in horrible sweatshop-like factory conditions that have little to no environmental regulation whatsoever. Rather than relying on the mayors of Miami and Phoenix and Portland and Seattle, which already have dramatic environmental regulations comparatively to other cities in the world, as the problem. Identifying you as the problem and saying that you need to change all of this. If these people were really serious about offsetting carbon emissions, don't you think they would be celebrating that we have just invented a car that runs on water? It can drive 1,000 miles on water before even needing to be filled up, if I remember correctly. I just watched a video about that the other day. But no, nobody wants to talk about that. Instead, we're just going to talk about how it's illegal for you to own any car. That's just a problem. Or maybe we would be bringing more attention to the fact that electric vehicles actually are worse for the environment than gas-powered vehicles today, because the electric grid produces more carbon emissions than your privately owned gas-guzzling vehicle that you drive to work and back every single day. Maybe we would want to come up with solutions for that. or develop actual green alternatives for energy sources, or try to reduce carbon emissions of public transportation or the electricity grid, or maybe tell all of these billionaires and CEOs and politicians that they should learn how to fly frickin' economy commercial when they go to Davos, Switzerland every year, instead of take their massive private jets and fly all over the world whenever they want to go to dinner in Dubai and then a party in Milan and then the World Economic Forum in Davos afterwards. I mean, I'm just so tired of these people hiding behind this very effective, very convenient excuse that we want to save the planet, but all of the things that they claim are going to save the planet are looking in the complete wrong direction in order to actually accomplish that goal. 90% of the time, it's an estimate, but upwards of 90% of the time, these people are not interested at all in climate change. They're not interested at all in environmentalism or conservation of public lands or green energy alternatives or whatever they want to call the Green New Deal, the global Green New Deal. They're not. What they are interested in is regulating and controlling every single thing you do. I mean, they're even admitting that this will never be enough. The delivery and implementation of these interventions will require hugely ambitious action. I know I've read this 8 times, but I think it matters. On a scale the world has not yet seen. We need additional measures, additional technical, social, and economic interventions. For Lord's sake, what could they possibly ban beyond making it illegal to own your own car, to eat meat, to drink dairy products or eat dairy products, to get on a plane, even a commercial plane? Do they want to ban or regulate how often you can breathe? I mean, literally, what is more interventionary than what they've already laid out in these documents? Anybody want to venture a guess? I don't know how much crazier the quiet part out loud can become for people to feel uncomfortable. Reading this document alone, you need to be feeling dramatically uncomfortable. This is the you will own nothing and you will be happy agenda right before your very eyes in a very clever way. And to just share with you my feelings unpacking all of this, this is a lot scarier to me. This document is a lot scarier to me than a World Economic Forum summit or Klaus Schwab or any of the major billionaire CEOs trying to say we need to do this through global governance, because this isn't happening through global governance. This is happening through city and local governance. And as I said at the beginning of this stream, the average person that I know, friends, family, peers, acquaintances, etc., the average person that I know probably couldn't look at their map of their own city and say, I know exactly who my mayor is. Phoenix people, could you honestly tell me off the top of your head who the mayor of Phoenix is? Who the mayor of Miami is if you live here? I know. And if he wasn't running for president, I think less people would know. Or New Orleans, or Houston, or Austin. How about San Francisco? Or Philadelphia, or Washington, D.C., or Boston? Do you think the average American, especially, sadly, because we don't have a lot of civics education happening right now, could tell me who their mayor is? Probably not. And to be totally transparent with you, I'm exceptionally plugged in to the political world. I spend a lot more time looking into the political world and providing commentary and talking and researching about this stuff than the average person. I couldn't tell you what's on the agenda right down the street at Miami City Hall. I have no idea. I spend way too much time focusing at the federal level. I have no idea what legislation, what initiatives, what policy goals are even remotely on the mind of my mayor. And I know who my mayor is at least, so that's a positive first step, but I don't know. I have no clue. The average person doesn't pay attention at all to what their local, close to home government is doing. Most people don't know what their school district is teaching their children. Most people have no idea what their county commissioners are doing or even what their state legislature is doing. All we really pay attention to in media and information dissemination is major federal elections for congressmen, from senators, for the president of the United States that happen every 2, 4, or 6 years, and we don't pay attention to anything else. If this group is successful in getting their goals accomplished, in implementing a global Green New Deal, it's because they are smart enough to realize, yeah, people have caught on to this whole global governance thing. People have caught on to this New World Order global reset thing. I don't think we're going to be able to do that. There's going to be way too much pushback. But where are people not paying attention? They're not paying attention at their local city level. So if we can get all of the same initiatives, all of the same platforms, all of the same principle sets to be adopted by cities where people aren't paying attention, isn't it getting to the same end result without any of the backlash or even awareness that it is happening in the first place than if we did the Great Global Reset, New World Order, World Economic Forum thing? Isn't that the exact same thing? And this is where I feel concerned because, sadly, I think this could happen tomorrow. I really do. I think this could get implemented almost instantaneously with zero societal awareness, let alone pushback. And then it would be too late. Way too late. I hate the idea that I have to move again sometime soon. That absolutely sucks. And I certainly will be sending a strongly worded email inquiry to my mayor over this now that I just moved to Miami a few months ago. But not to sound like your resident tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, if you're not at least somewhat thinking about what this or any other crazy policy thing that you hear all the time on social media might mean for you and your family, you might want to start making a game plan. You might want to start thinking about, how can I be locally sourcing my own food outside of the grocery store? Maybe not even growing or harvesting or slaughtering or hunting it for yourself, but where can I be making arrangements to independently get food not from a grocery store so that I know it wasn't grown in a lab, so that I know I'm not eating processed crap, so that I know I'm not being fed stuff that my body can't break down, but just that I know I'm eating reliable food. Maybe it's time to start thinking, what if, theoretically, I don't have access to an electricity grid? And this is a good question to be asking yourself just from a preparedness perspective anyway. I'm saying this as Florida is gearing up for a major hurricane right now. What if I don't have access to an electricity grid? What would I do? What would I do for my family? How would I provide for my family? How would I continue making a living? Could I even do that? What if I couldn't get on an airplane anymore? What if the aviation industry didn't let me take enough questions or enough flights and started asking me questions about how often I was traveling and I had to make alternative arrangements? Do I even have alternative arrangements? What if? It bears repeating these questions to yourself over and over and over again, not just for a preparedness perspective or a preparedness conversation, but because it's looking an awful lot to me like we're going to have to start asking these questions very, very soon on a practical level for our own cities, for where we might live. If you live in Austin, in Boston, in Chicago, in Houston, in LA, Miami, Montreal, New Orleans, New York, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Portland, San Francisco, Seattle, Toronto, Vancouver, DC. For our friends in Europe, if you live in Amsterdam, Athens, Barcelona, Berlin, Copenhagen, Heidelberg, Istanbul, Lisbon, London, Madrid, Milan, Oslo, Paris, Rome, Rotterdam, Stockholm, Tel Aviv, or Warsaw. If you live in any of these cities in Latin America, if you live in any of these cities in Africa, these are questions you need to start asking yourself. For our friends in Australia and New Zealand, you're on this list too. Don't think for a second you're not. 20% of the world's economy is highlighted on this map in just these cities. Chances are your life, whether you live in the city or not, is impacted by what happens in those cities. If your city is serious about following the benchmarks of this organization, which is debatable, right? I think you could make the argument that this is all just wishy-washy hopes and dreams and it'll never actually happen. It's fine. It's fine to think that. But what if it's not? What if it actually is serious? If your city, your backyard, your mayor, your city council is set to potentially outlaw meat consumption, tell you exactly how many calories you are allowed to eat every day, make you not just have like a gun buyback program, but make you have a car buyback program because private vehicle ownership is outlawed, is illegal overnight. Do you have a plan for that? That sounds so insane and so tinfoil hat and so that would never actually happen in real life. I know how it sounds. I'm like the resident tinfoil hat girl now. But a few years ago, there were a lot of these conversations when we saw the entire world change overnight, just for 2 weeks until it wasn't. This could happen overnight in your city, in your backyard. It could, very realistically, very easily, and no one would be the wiser. There would be no backlash. There hell wouldn't even be any awareness of it happening. What would you do? Zachary in Rumble's chat says, silence is consent. If you're unaware of this, if you are silent about it, if you're not speaking up about it or telling your mayor about any of it, are you consenting to it? It's a fair question. It's a valid question. They think you can start doing this on a city-by-city basis and implementing this through city legislation and city policy changes and city enforcement because it's going to be a whole lot easier to get by without any backlash if you do it this way rather than the global governance structure. Now that you know that this is happening, if your city is on this list, and you can look it up, there are 96 cities all over the world that are a part of this conglomeration group. And I'm dropping the link right now in the chat for you guys to check it out. If your city is on this list, it's time for you to call the mayor's office. Or go there and demand a meeting with somebody who works there. Is silence consent? Arguably, yes. And I know everybody is saying this could never happen. This would never happen. We value our freedom too much. We value our liberty too much. We said the exact same thing about a whole lot of other concepts in the last few years that absolutely did happen and probably are going to happen again if you're paying attention at all to the national media in America in the last few weeks. Stand up for yourself. Banning meat and banning dairy and banning new clothes purchases and banning airline travel and banning private vehicle ownership sounds crazy, but it could happen. But it doesn't have to happen. You can stand up for yourself today and say, not in my backyard. And while we're at it, let's actually come up with beneficial solutions for climate change and for environmentalism that actually make an impact to conserve our beautiful places. Let's call out China and India for their unbelievable, unparalleled pollution in the ocean and in the air alike. Let's change how our clothing is made. Let's change at the source what these textile production industries actually do. Not by influencing how many clothing options you're allowed to buy every year, but by changing the sweatshops that are making most of your clothes. Buy from better companies. Be a conscious consumer. Change demand yourself. Do the research where your clothes are made and in what types of factories your clothes are made. Chances are they're probably toxic anyway, so you should be looking for made close to home, non-toxic clothing anyway. Stop going to the major big box grocery store and go to a farmer's market. Start supporting your neighbor who grows their own food in their backyard. Grow your own food if you want. That sounds so impossible to do, but it's really not. We've been doing this for thousands and thousands and thousands of years as humans, trying to figure out how we support each other in our own communities and how we can support ourselves and our families. This takes responsibility. The easy button in a lot of these urban areas is to just go with the flow. Do whatever is close to home, go to the closest grocery store from home, buy the cheapest thing, Keep your head down. Don't make a scene. Get through it. I've lived in a lot of urban areas throughout my young adult life. I've lived in DC. I've lived in Phoenix. I've lived in Miami, all of which are on this list. The easy thing to do is to just go with the flow and pretend like it's not happening. And certainly the easy thing to do is not do the extra mile to provide for yourself and grow your own food and take advantage of supporting local communities instead of the big box stores. That's the easy thing to do. We have to stop doing the easy thing if we want to take responsibility for our lives. That's just the nature of what world we live in today. And if you want to provide a better future and present for yourself and your family, it starts today with doing the hard thing. Be inconvenienced. At least inconvenienced enough to call the mayor's office and say, no, not on my watch, or I'll move, or I'm leaving. Because the interesting thing, if you really think about it, is, yes, 20% of the global economy is currently in these cities. But if half of the population of these cities left and went somewhere else, there would be a massive economic crisis the world has never seen while we try to recalibrate and figure out what's next. You don't have to live in one of these cities. We have the opportunity as the people to influence governance, not the other way around. And it might not be that way forever. But at least for now in the United States, we still arguably have a government and a governance structure that is by the people, of the people, for the people. They work for us, not the other way around. Don't wait so long to speak up. Don't wait so long to influence policy. Don't wait so long to fight for your community that we lose that ability in the future, that it's too late, that we don't have a government of and by and for the people. Speak up, or we're going to lack the opportunity to very darn soon. You guys, what an interesting stream. I hope that was something that you learned that was new today. I certainly had never really learned about this until our amazing friends over at Valuetainment had posted it on Instagram. Absolutely crazy stuff that we are dealing with today. And I hope that all of you who live in one of these cities, myself included, are going to call up the mayor's office ASAP this week and let them know what you think about the C40 climate initiative and how you don't think it actually impacts the environment in a very positive way. We are going to jump over to our locals community, which all of you guys are invited to, and I am dropping the stream right now for our post-stream Q&A, dropping the link right now, rather. For our post-stream Q&A. We would love to see you over there. And if you're interested in making some new friends, getting a more behind-the-scenes look at how I make my content, and getting access to a ton of content that's not present anywhere else, Locals is where you need to be. You can click that link I just dropped in the chat to join us over there. Again, just as a reminder, I'm traveling tomorrow through Thursday to Colorado to order my wedding dress and do a bunch of fun wedding planning stuff. So we are going to have a little bit of a different stream time tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, but I will keep you updated and let you know right away. Do not worry. Church just said, oh, come on, I just got here. If you guys just got here, as soon as the stream is over, please feel free to rewind to the beginning and rewatch and share with other people so that they are aware of what is going on with the C40 cities climate initiatives. Most importantly, as we sign out of the stream today, do me a huge favor. You guys know the drill. Hit the like button for this episode of the stream. It might look like a thumbs up or a heart just to help continue boosting this in the algorithm. Ring the notification bell so that you're always aware of when we go live or upload a new video. And most importantly, if you do nothing else, please smash that follow or subscribe button on whatever platform you are watching on right now. We are live right now on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, Getter, and Locals. And I'm just a girl in her spare bedroom of her apartment. No major budget. No huge multi-million-dollar media company telling us what to talk about or what to say. It's just authentic grassroots content over here, and we love to see it. So the only way that we can grow is when you guys hit that follow or subscribe button on whatever platform you are watching on, and continue sending this to friends and people that you think might be interested in joining in. So grateful for each and every one of you. I would love to see all of you jump over to Locals, so hit that link that I just dropped in the live chat to join us over there for our post-stream Q&A. In the meantime, we'll see you guys tomorrow back for the stream. Time to be announced in the morning. Bye, guys. Love you.